The evening shift at Taesong 7 repair station always felt longer than it actually was. Daehyun wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag and looked at the massive starship engine in front of him. Another 12 hours of work, and he still had 3 more to fix before the week ended. His back hurt, his fingers were numb, and his stomach growled loudly in the quiet workshop. He grabbed his dinner container from the small cooling unit near his workbench. Inside was the same meal he ate every day: rice, some vegetables, and a small piece of protein that claimed to be chicken but probably wasn't. Station food was expensive, and mechanics like him didn't make enough to buy the good stuff, but it filled his stomach, and that was enough. Daehyun didn't like eating in the crowded mess hall where other workers gathered. Too many people, too much noise, too many questions about why he always sat alone. Instead, he took his meals to the scrapyard behind the station. It was quiet there, just him and the piles of broken metal and discarded ship parts. Nobody bothered him in the scrapyard. He walked through the narrow pathway between towers of scrap, his boots crunching on loose debris. The artificial lights of the station created long shadows that danced across the metal heaps. Daehyun found his usual spot, a flat piece of hull plating that made a decent bench, and sat down. He opened his container and picked up his chopsticks. That's when he heard it, a scraping sound, metal against metal, coming from deeper in the scrapyard, then a soft thump like something heavy falling. Daehyun paused, chopsticks halfway to his mouth. The scrapyard was supposed to be empty at this hour. Maybe a piece of junk had shifted and fallen. It happened sometimes. He tried to ignore it and took a bite of his food. But then he heard something else. A wheezing breath, painful and labored. Something was alive out there. Daehyun set his food down and stood up. He pulled out his small work light and shone it toward the source of the sound. "Hello, someone there?" No answer. Just that terrible wheezing sound again. He walked carefully between the piles of scrap, following the sound. His light swept across broken engines, cracked hull plates, and twisted metal beams. Then the light caught something that made him stop breathing. Eyes. Golden eyes, huge and luminous, staring at him from the shadows. Daehyun stumbled backward, nearly dropping his light. His heart hammered in his chest. But the eyes didn't move. They just watched him with an expression that looked almost sad. He forced himself to step closer, raising his light higher. The beam revealed a creature unlike anything he'd seen in person before, though he recognized it from old database entries. A dragon, a real Yongari dragon. But this dragon was in terrible condition. Its scales, which should have gleamed like polished stone, were dull and covered in dust. Its wings were torn, with holes in the delicate membrane between the bone structures. The creature was thin, so desperately thin that Daehyun could see its ribs pressing against its scaled skin. It lay collapsed among the scrap, its long neck barely able to hold up its head. The dragon's golden eyes followed Daehyun's movements. There was intelligence in those eyes, a deep awareness that sent a shiver down his spine. This wasn't just an animal. This was a person. "You're hurt," Daehyun said softly, though he felt stupid stating the obvious. The dragon's mouth moved. Its voice came out as a rasping whisper, speaking in Galactic Common with a heavy accent. "Please, I mean no trouble, human." Daehyun took another step closer. Now he could see more details. Scratches and cuts covered the dragon's body. One of its claws was broken. This creature had been through hell. "How long have you been here?" Daehyun asked. The dragon's eyes closed briefly, as if remembering caused pain. "Many days, maybe. 12, 15? I lost count. I hide during the day. Look for food at night. But there is nothing. Only metal. Cannot eat metal. You've been starving for 2 weeks?" Horror filled Daehyun's voice. The dragon managed something that might have been a nod. Its head swayed, and for a moment Daehyun thought it would collapse completely. But those golden eyes opened again and fixed on him. Or rather, they fixed on something behind him. Daehyun turned and realized what the dragon was looking at. His dinner container, sitting on the hull plating where he'd left it. Still half full of food, he looked back at the dragon. The creature wasn't making demands. It wasn't threatening him or trying to take the food by force. It was just looking at it with desperate hunger written across its scaled face. Then the dragon spoke again. Its voice was so quiet that Daehyun almost missed the words. "May I have leftovers, sir?" Those 6 words hit Daehyun like a physical blow. This magnificent creature, this being with intelligence and dignity, had been reduced to begging for table scraps, and it was asking, not demanding, not threatening. asking with the word sir attached as if Daehyun was somehow above it in status. Daehyun had spent 5 years on this station keeping his head down and his heart closed. After losing his family in the transport accident, he'd decided that caring about others hurt too much. Better to be alone. Better to focus on engines and machines that couldn't leave you. But looking into those golden eyes, seeing the desperate hope mixed with fear of rejection, something inside him cracked. "Wait here," he said. He walked back to his spot and picked up his dinner container. He'd only eaten a few bites, so most of it was still there. He carried it back to where the dragon lay and knelt down beside the creature, setting the container within reach. "It's not much," Daehyun said, "but it's yours." The dragon stared at him for a long moment. Then, moving slowly as if afraid the offer would be withdrawn, it stretched its neck forward and began to eat. The sounds it made were almost heartbreaking. Small whimpers of relief mixed with the desperate speed of someone who hadn't eaten in far too long. Daehyun watched in silence. As the dragon ate, he noticed something strange. A faint glow seemed to emanate from the creature's scales, barely visible in the dim light, and when the dragon's eyes met his again, that glow intensified for just a moment. Something passed between them in that instant. Daehyun felt a flutter in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the cool night air of the scrapyard. The dragon's eyes widened and it pulled back slightly, as if it had felt something too. "What was that?" Daehyun whispered. The dragon finished the last of the food and looked at him with an expression that seemed almost reverent. You gave freely, asked nothing, expected nothing. I felt your heart, human. It is kind. My name is Daehyun," he said. "What's yours?" "Hui," the dragon replied. "My name is Hui." Daehyun stood up slowly, his mind racing. He couldn't leave Hui here to starve, but keeping an unregistered alien on the station was against regulations. He could lose his job. He could be deported. But when he looked into those golden eyes again, the decision was already made. "I'll come back tomorrow," Daehyun said, "with more food. Can you stay hidden until then?" Hui's eyes filled with something that looked like tears, though dragons might not cry the same way humans did. "Yes, I hide well. Thank you, Daehyun-si. You saved my life this night." As Daehyun walked back to his quarters, his empty food container in hand, he didn't feel hungry anymore. He felt something he hadn't felt in 5 long years. He felt needed. Behind him, hidden among the scrap, Hui curled into a slightly less painful position. For the first time since losing his clan, the dragon felt something other than despair. He felt hope. And in the darkness of the scrapyard, both of them noticed the faint glow that still lingered where their eyes had met, a luminescence that defied explanation, but promised that something extraordinary had just begun. Part 2. The Bond Awakens. Daehyun couldn't sleep that night. He lay in his narrow bunk in the workers' dormitory, staring at the ceiling and thinking about golden eyes and torn wings. Around him, other mechanics snored and mumbled in their sleep, but his mind wouldn't rest. He kept seeing Hui's face when the dragon had asked for leftovers, the dignity mixed with desperation. The way Hui had thanked him with that respectful "si" honorific, as if Daehyun was someone worthy of respect when all he'd done was share some food. When his alarm went off at 6 in the morning, Daehyun was already awake. He skipped breakfast in the mess hall and instead bought 3 extra meal containers from the vending machine near the dorms. His credit account couldn't really afford it, but he pushed that worry aside. He stuffed the containers into his work bag and headed to the scrapyard before his shift started. The morning light made the scrapyard look different, less mysterious and more just like what it was, a dumping ground for broken things. Daehyun picked his way through the piles carefully, trying to remember exactly where he'd found Hui last night. "Hui?" he called softly. "It's me, Daehyun." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then he heard movement from behind a massive pile of crushed hull plating. Hui's head emerged, golden eyes blinking in the daylight. The dragon looked even worse in the bright light. The cuts on its scales were crusted with dried blood. Its wings hung limply at its sides. "You came back," Hui said, and there was wonder in the dragon's voice. "I feared I dreamed last night." "I brought breakfast," Daehyun said, pulling out the meal containers. 3 of them. Eat as much as you need." Hui crawled out from the hiding spot, moving slowly and painfully. As the dragon came closer, Daehyun got his first good look at how large Hui actually was. Even starved and collapsed, Hui was easily. Daehyun couldn't sleep that night. He lay in his narrow bunk in the workers' dormitory, staring at the ceiling and thinking about golden eyes and torn wings. Around him, other mechanics snored and mumbled in their sleep, but his mind wouldn't rest. He kept seeing Hui's face when the dragon had asked for leftovers. The dignity mixed with desperation, the way Hui had thanked him with that respectful sigh honorific, as if Daehyun was someone worthy of respect when all he'd done was share some food. When his alarm went off at 6 in the morning, Daehyun was already awake. He skipped breakfast in the mess hall and instead bought 3 extra meal containers from the vending machine near the dorms. His credit account couldn't really afford it, but he pushed that worry aside. He stuffed the containers into his work bag and headed to the scrapyard before his shift started. The morning light made the scrapyard look different, less mysterious and more just like what it was, a dumping ground for broken things. Daehyun picked his way through the piles carefully, trying to remember exactly where he'd found Hui last night. "Hui?" he called softly. "It's me, Daehyun." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then he heard movement from behind a massive pile of crushed hull plating. Hui's head emerged, golden eyes blinking in the daylight. The dragon looked even worse in the bright light. The cuts on its scales were crusted with dried blood. Its wings hung limply at its sides. "You came back," Hui said, and there was wonder in the dragon's voice. "I feared I dreamed last night." "I brought breakfast," Daehyun said, pulling out the meal containers. 3 of them. "Eat as much as you need." Hui crawled out from the hiding spot, moving slowly and painfully. As the dragon came closer, Daehyun got his first good look at how large Hui actually was. Even starved and collapsed, Hui was easily twice as long as Daehyun was tall, with a wingspan that must have been impressive before it got torn. The dragon ate all 3 meals, more slowly this time than the desperate gulping of last night. Between bites, Hui talked. The words came haltingly at first, but gradually built into a story that made Daehyun's chest ache. Hui's clan had been refugees, fleeing from a war zone 3 sectors away. The Yongari dragons had once been powerful and respected across the galaxy, but centuries of conflicts had reduced them to scattered groups of displaced families. Hui's clan had been traveling to a sanctuary planet when their transport ship was attacked by pirates. "We scattered," Hui explained, "everyone running different directions to confuse attackers. I flew hard, so hard my wings burned, found this station and hid, hoped to find clan again, but no one came. And I had no money, no identification papers, could not register with station authorities, could not ask for help. Why not?" Daehyun asked. "There are refugee services. They would have helped you." Hui's laugh was bitter. "You do not know how Galaxy sees dragons now. We are embarrassment, reminder of old times. Many stations turn away Yongari, say we are trouble, say we eat too much, take up too much space. Some places it is illegal to be dragon without proper permits. I had no permits." Daehyun felt anger rising in his chest. He'd heard about the refugee crisis, of course. Everyone had, but it was easy to ignore when you were just trying to survive yourself. Now looking at Hui, it became real and personal. "I won't let you starve," Daehyun said firmly. "I'll bring food every day, and we'll figure out how to get you legal status." Hui's eyes shimmered. "Why do you help me? You risk your job, your home. I am nothing to you." "You're not nothing," Daehyun said, surprised by the intensity in his own voice. "You're someone who needs help." "That's enough." As he said those words, that strange glow happened again. It started in Hui's eyes, golden light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Then Daehyun felt warmth spread through his own chest as if someone had lit a candle inside his ribcage. Hui's eyes went wide. "You feel it? The connection?" "I feel something," Daehyun admitted. "What is it?" The dragon moved closer and Daehyun noticed he wasn't afraid. He should be, probably. Hui was huge and had teeth like daggers, but all he felt was curiosity and a strange sense of rightness. "My grandmother told me stories," Hui said quietly. "Old stories from before the wars. She said Yongari once bonded with other species, not as masters and servants, but as partners. 2 souls connecting, sharing strength and thoughts and feelings. She called it Shimjong Bond, the heart bond." "I thought you were just myths," Daehyun said. "Dragon bonding. That stuff from children's stories." "Yes," Hui agreed, "because it became so rare. The bond only forms when one being offers help to another with completely pure intentions. No expectation of reward. No selfish motive, just kindness for its own sake. In our modern galaxy, such kindness almost never happens." Daehyun thought about last night. He hadn't given Hui food expecting anything in return. He'd just seen someone suffering and couldn't walk away. Was that really so unusual? Can I? Daehyun hesitated. Can I touch you? Your scales? Hui lowered his head in acceptance. Daehyun reached out slowly and placed his hand on the dragon's snout. The scales felt warm and surprisingly smooth. The moment they made contact, the world exploded with sensation. Daehyun felt Hui's hunger, not just the physical emptiness of a stomach, but a deep, aching loneliness that mirrored his own. He felt the terror of being hunted, the grief of losing family, the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. And Hui gasped, clearly feeling Daehyun's emotions in return. The human's carefully buried pain over his lost family, the 5 years of self-imposed isolation, the fear of caring about anyone because caring meant eventual loss and hurt. But underneath all that pain in both of them was something else. A capacity for love, a desire to connect, a strength neither of them knew they possessed. The glow intensified, surrounding both of them in golden light. Daehyun felt power flowing between them. Not depleting either, but somehow creating something new. His chronic back pain from years of mechanical work suddenly vanished. His tired muscles felt energized, and Hui was changing too. The dullness faded from the dragon's scales, replaced by a subtle shimmer. The cuts began to close, not completely but noticeably. The dragon's breathing came easier. When the light faded, they stared at each other in amazement. We bonded, Hui whispered. Shimjong bond. First one I ever heard of in my lifetime. Daehyun, do you understand what this means? Daehyun was still processing. He could feel Hui's presence in his mind now. Not like someone else's thoughts intruding, but like a door had opened to a room that had always been there. It felt comfortable. Right, what does it mean? He asked. It means we are connected now. Partners. What strengthens one strengthens both. We can share thoughts if we wish, and Hui paused, seeming almost shy. And it means you trusted me. Completely. Despite everything, you saw me as worthy of help. A loud beeping interrupted the moment. Daehyun's work comm was going off. His shift started in 10 minutes. I have to go, he said reluctantly. But I'll come back at lunch. And tonight. And tomorrow. I promise. I believe you, Hui said simply. I feel your truth through the bond. Go, Daehyun. Do your work. I will be safe. As Daehyun hurried toward the repair docks, he felt different. Lighter somehow, despite the bond adding another presence to his consciousness. For the first time in years, he wasn't alone. And when he reached his workshop and looked at the complicated engine he was supposed to repair, something incredible happened. He could see the problem instantly. Not just see it, but understand it on a level he never had before. His hands moved with confidence he'd never possessed, making adjustments that felt guided by instinct rather than training. The engine that should have taken him all day to fix was running perfectly within 2 hours. His supervisor, a gruff woman named Kyungmi, stared at him in shock. Daehyun, what happened? Did you take some kind of enhancement drug? No, he said honestly. I just finally figured it out. But he knew the truth. The bond with Hui wasn't just emotional. It was changing him, enhancing his abilities. And somewhere in the scrapyard, he could feel Hui resting more comfortably than the dragon had in weeks. Healing faster because Daehyun was sharing his strength. This was going to complicate everything. But as Daehyun felt Hui's gratitude and hope flowing through their connection, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. They were in this together now. Whatever came next, they would face it as partners. Daehyun managed to sneak food to Hui twice a day, and the dragon's condition improved dramatically. The bond between them grew stronger too. Sometimes Daehyun would be working on an engine and suddenly know that Hui was thinking about him. Sometimes Hui would doze in the scrapyard and dream about Daehyun's memories of his family. On the third day, security officer Bowman found them. Daehyun was sitting with Hui during his lunch break, showing the dragon pictures on his datapad of different types of starship engines. Hui found them fascinating, asking questions that showed surprising intelligence about mechanics and engineering. They didn't hear Bowman approach until the officer cleared his throat loudly. Both of them jumped. Hui scrambled backward, wings spreading defensively despite their torn state. Daehyun shot to his feet, heart pounding. Bowman was a big man with a scarred face and a reputation for following rules strictly. He stood with his arms crossed, staring at Hui with an expression that was hard to read. That's a Yongari dragon, Bowman said flatly. Unregistered alien life form. You know the penalty for harboring one without proper permits? Dahyun stepped between Bowman and Hui. He's not hurting anyone. He just needs help. Help isn't the issue, Bowman replied. Law is the law. I should report this immediately. He paused, then sighed. But I won't, not yet. Dahyun blinked in surprise. You won't? My daughter is married to a Keltharian, Bowman said quietly. They had to fight for 3 years to get the proper permits for him to live on this station. I know what the system does to refugees. It's not right, he looked at Hui directly. But I can't ignore this completely. Director Mirai will find out eventually. Better it comes from me than from someone less sympathetic. That's how Dahyun found himself in Director Mirai's office an hour later, with Hui hiding nervously in the scrapyard and Bowman standing beside him. Director Mirai was a tall woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She listened to Bowman's report in silence, then turned her attention to Dahyun. You understand you broke station regulations, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, ma'am, Dahyun replied. Why? Because he was starving. Because he asked politely for leftovers, and that broke my heart. Because leaving him to die would have been wrong. Mirai studied him for a long moment. Bowman tells me you've been doing exceptional work this week. Your supervisor says you fixed the primary dock engine in record time. That engine has been malfunctioning for months. Dahyun nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am. How? This was the moment. He could lie or he could tell the truth and risk everything. Through the bond, he felt Hui's anxiety and fear. I bonded with him, Dahyun said quietly. The dragon. His name is Hui. We formed a Shimjong bond. It's enhanced my abilities. Mirai's eyebrows rose. I thought those were myths. So did I. The director stood and walked to her window looking out over the station. We have a problem, Dahyun. A big one. The main reactor has been malfunctioning for weeks. We've had 3 different engineering teams try to fix it. All of them failed. If we can't repair it within the next 10 days, the Galactic Council representative will declare the station non-operational and recommend it be sold to private corporate interests. She turned back to face him. There's a man named Theron here from the Vex Collective. He's been pushing hard for that outcome. Claims the station needs corporate management. But if that happens, half the refugees we shelter here will be deported. The Vex doesn't like keeping unproductive populations. Dahyun began to understand where this was going. I'll make you a deal, Mirai said. You and your dragon fix that reactor and I'll grant him full sanctuary status. Legal residency, worker permits, the whole package. But if you fail, he gets deported and you lose your job. Do we have an agreement? It was an enormous risk. The reactor was supposed to be one of the most complex systems on the station. But through the bond, Dahyun felt something else. Hui's confidence. The dragon had been listening through their connection and believed they could do this. We accept, Dahyun said. 2 hours later, he and Hui stood in the reactor chamber. It was a massive space filled with glowing conduits and humming machinery. The air smelled like ozone and hot metal. Chui had been allowed inside the station for the first time, but wore a tracking collar that would alert security if he tried to leave. The dragon looked around with wide eyes, clearly overwhelmed by the size of everything. Ji Woo, a young engineer with nervous energy, hovered nearby. She'd been assigned to assist them but looked skeptical. No offense, she said, but I've been working on this reactor for 3 weeks. My entire team has. What makes you think you can fix it when we couldn't? Dahyun approached the main control panel and placed his hand on it. Through the bond, he shared his senses with Hui. The dragon's different perception of energy flows combined with Dahyun's technical knowledge created something new. Together they could see patterns that neither could detect alone. There, Dahyun said, pointing to a conduit on the far wall. That's not actually broken. It's working perfectly. The problem is 3 levels down, in the secondary buffer system. Something is blocking the energy flow. Jiwoo checked her data pad. That's impossible. We tested those buffers. They were fine. Test them again, Dahyun said. But physically, send someone down there to look with their own eyes. Jiwoo made the call. 20 minutes later, a technician reported back with shock in his voice. There's a metal plate welded across one of the buffer channels. It's not on any of our schematics. Someone put it there deliberately. Sabotage. The word hung unspoken in the air. Can you remove it? Mirai's voice came through the comm system. She was monitoring their progress from her office. Not easily, the technician replied. It's military-grade alloy. It'll take hours with our cutting tools, and we risk damaging the conduits around it. Hui stepped forward. I can help, the dragon said softly. Everyone turned to stare. Dragonfire, Hui explained. Controlled precisely, very hot, can melt through metal without harming surrounding systems. But I must be there. Must see it clearly. Daehyun felt the dragon's certainty through the bond. He can do it, he said. I'll guide him. Getting Hui down 3 levels through maintenance shafts designed for human-sized workers was challenging, but the dragon could squeeze through spaces that seemed impossibly small. Daehyun climbed down with him, the two of them navigating the cramped passages through their shared awareness. When they reached the buffer chamber, Daehyun examined the welded plate carefully. Can you heat just this spot? He asked, pointing. Without damaging the conduit behind it? Hui moved close, golden eyes studying the metal. Yes, but you must tell me when to stop. Your eyes are better for judging metal stress than mine. They worked together in perfect synchronization. Hui's fire, impossibly hot and controlled, focused on the welded plate. Daehyun watched the metal's color change, monitoring the temperature through both his training and the enhanced perception the bond gave him. Little more. Little more. Now stop! The plate fell away, melted cleanly through without damaging anything around it. Behind it, the buffer channel opened up, and Daehyun could immediately hear the energy flow correcting itself. Throughout the reactor, systems that had been straining began to work smoothly again. The humming changed pitch, becoming deeper and steadier. In the control room, Jiwoo stared at her monitors in disbelief. It's working. Everything is stabilizing. How did you... But Daehyun was focused on something else. He picked up the melted plate carefully with a heat-resistant glove. This was sabotage, he said into his comm. Director Mireille, someone deliberately damaged this reactor. I know, Mireille's voice was grim. And I think I know who. Come to my office when you're done. Both of you. It took them another 4 hours to complete all the repairs and optimizations. By the time they finished, the reactor was running better than it had in years. Jiwoo had gone from skeptical to amazed, asking Hui detailed questions about Dragonfire and how it could be controlled so precisely. In Mireille's office, they found Bowman already waiting along with Theron, the Vex Collective representative. Theron was a tall humanoid with pale gray skin and cold eyes. He looked at Hui with obvious disdain. A dragon, he said dismissively. How quaint. I hope you're not expecting praise for fixing a problem you probably caused. We didn't cause it, Daehyun said, pulling out the melted plate in its evidence bag. Someone sabotaged the reactor. Someone who wanted this station to fail. Theron's expression didn't change, but Daehyun felt something through the bond. Hui was watching the Vex representative carefully, and the dragon's instincts were screaming danger. Be careful, Hui's thought whispered through their connection. This one lies with every breath. Mireille took the evidence bag. I'll be investigating this thoroughly. But regardless of who caused the damage, Daehyun and Hui fixed it. That was our agreement. She pulled out an official document and pressed her thumb to it, making it legally binding. Hui of the Yongari clan, I grant you full sanctuary status on Taesong 7 Station. Welcome. Hui's eyes shone with tears. The dragon bowed deeply to Mireille, then to Daehyun. Through the bond, Daehyun felt overwhelming gratitude and joy. They'd won this battle. But as Theron left the office with barely concealed anger on his face, both Daehyun and Hui knew this was far from over. The saboteur was still out there, and they were not going to be happy that their plan had failed. Hui moved into Daehyun's quarters, which meant Daehyun had to request a larger space. The station housing administrator seemed annoyed until Director Mireille personally approved the request. They gave him a small warehouse unit that had been used for storage. It wasn't fancy, but it had enough room for a dragon. Together, they cleaned it out and made it home. Daehyun set up his small bed in one corner. Hui claimed the other corner, piling up old blankets and cushions into a nest. The dragon seemed fascinated by everything human, asking endless questions about how machines worked and why humans did things certain ways. You are a very strange species, Hui said one evening, watching Daehyun cook dinner on a small heating unit. You need tools for everything. Cannot breathe fire to cook. Cannot fly to reach high places, cannot sense electromagnetic fields, yet you make machines to do all these things. Very clever. I never thought about it that way, Daehyun admitted. We just adapt, I guess. Jiwoo had become their first real friend on the station. She visited often, bringing data pads full of engineering problems she wanted their opinion on. The young engineer was brilliant but had always been too shy to speak up in meetings. Around Daehyun and Hui, she relaxed and her ideas flowed freely. "You two work together like you share one brain," she said one day. "It's amazing to watch." Bowman stopped by too, though less frequently. The security officer brought news from his investigation into the reactor sabotage. "I can't prove anything yet," Bowman said, frustration evident in his voice. "But I found records of 3 other incidents in the past month. A cargo lift that collapsed, a water filtration system that mysteriously failed, a docking arm that nearly crushed a ship. Each time the damage looked like normal wear and tear. But the pattern is suspicious. All things that would make the station seem poorly maintained," Daehyun mused, "giving the council reason to shut us down." "Exactly," Bowman agreed. He glanced at Hui. "Can your dragon sense anything unusual? I've heard Yongari have special abilities." Hui looked uncertain. "I can sense energy flows, electromagnetic disturbances, but I would need to be near the damaged systems. May I help with investigation?" "I was hoping you'd offer," Bowman said with a slight smile. Over the next week, the 3 of them formed an unofficial investigation team. Jiwoo used her access to station systems to pull maintenance records. Bowman interviewed workers and reviewed security footage. Hui and Daehyun physically inspected sites where suspicious incidents had occurred. It was during one of these inspections that Hui made a disturbing discovery. They were examining a communications relay that had supposedly failed due to a power surge. Daehyun was checking the physical components while Hui extended his senses to feel the energy patterns in the area. Suddenly, the dragon went rigid. "There," Hui hissed. "Do you feel that?" Through the bond, Daehyun tried to sense what Hui was experiencing. It was faint, but there. A pattern in the electromagnetic field that felt wrong. Artificial, deliberate. "What is it?" Daehyun asked. "Device," Hui said. "Small, hidden in walls. Creating interference. Not enough to cause immediate damage, but over time." The dragon's eyes narrowed. Over time would make systems fail slowly. Look like natural breakdown. They called Bowman, who brought a specialized scanner. Behind the wall panel, they found a device no bigger than Daehyun's thumb. It was sophisticated technology, military grade, and definitely not standard station equipment. Bowman's face went dark when he saw it. "This is Vex Collective Tech. I recognize the design." They found 11 more devices scattered throughout the station, all in critical systems. Each one was slowly degrading the infrastructure, making everything seem old and unreliable. Director Mirai called an emergency meeting after Bowman presented the evidence. Present were Mirai, Bowman, Daehyun, Hui, Jiwoo, and unfortunately Theron. The Vex Collective representative listened to the report with a carefully neutral expression. When Bowman finished, Theron spoke calmly. "This is obviously concerning. However, I must point out that Vex technology is widely available on the black market. Anyone could have purchased these devices. Accusing the Vex Collective of sabotage without concrete proof is a serious matter. Who else benefits from this station failing?" Bowman demanded. "Many corporations would be interested in acquiring this station," Theron replied smoothly. "I'm sure the council would welcome a thorough investigation. Perhaps we should bring in outside security forces to ensure impartiality." Mirai shook her head. "We'll handle this internally for now. But Theron, I want a full audit of all Vex personnel and equipment on this station." "Of course," Theron agreed. "The Vex Collective has nothing to hide." After the meeting, Hui pulled Daehyun aside. Through the bond, the dragon shared a memory that made Daehyun's blood run cold. It was from weeks ago, before Hui had met Daehyun. The dragon had been hiding near the docks, desperately looking for food scraps when he'd seen something. Ships with Vex Collective markings firing on civilian transports. Hui's own clan ship. "They attacked your people?" Daehyun asked, horrified. "Yes," Hui confirmed. "After attack, I heard them talking. They said something about biological materials. Valuable resources. They were hunting Yongari not just to clear space, but to harvest from us. Our scales, our fire glands, our bones. All valuable on black market." Daehyun felt sick. Theron isn't just trying to acquire this station for profit. If he controls it, he controls who comes and goes. It would be the perfect base for his operations. And no one would suspect, Hui added. Respectable council representative, yes? But underneath a monster, they needed proof, real evidence that would expose Theron's crimes. But the Vex representative was careful. He'd covered his tracks well. That night, Daehyun couldn't sleep. He lay awake, listening to Hui's soft breathing from the dragon's nest. Through the bond, he could feel the dragon's troubled dreams. Hui was dreaming about his clan, about his mother who'd been a teacher, his younger sister, who'd loved collecting strange rocks from every planet they visited, his grandmother, who told stories about the old days when dragons bonded with other species and everyone lived in harmony. All of them were gone now. Most likely dead or scattered across the galaxy. Daehyun had lost his family too. His parents and his younger brother had been on that transport that crashed. He remembered the day he'd gotten the news, the way the world had seemed to stop making sense, the way he'd decided that caring about people meant setting yourself up for heartbreak. But now he had Hui, and Jiwoo and Bowman, who'd become friends. And all the refugees on this station who depended on it remaining open and safe. He couldn't let Theron win. Couldn't let more families be destroyed because one man valued profit over lives. Cannot sleep? Hui's voice came softly from the darkness. Just thinking, Daehyun replied. About what we must do? Yeah, Hui was quiet for a moment. I am afraid, the dragon admitted. Theron is powerful, has resources, has influence. We are just one mechanic and one refugee dragon. How do we fight someone like that? It was a good question, one Daehyun had been asking himself. But then he thought about that first night in the scrapyard, when he'd shared his dinner with a starving dragon, not because it was smart or strategic, but because it was right. That simple act of kindness had created a bond that gave them both power they'd never imagined. Maybe that was the answer. Not fighting Theron's power with more power, but fighting it with something he couldn't understand or predict. We do what humans do best, Daehyun said. We adapt. We find creative solutions. We refuse to give up. And what do dragons do best? Hui asked. Daehyun smiled in the darkness. Dragons remember? Your people have long memories, right? You remember everything Theron did to your clan. That's our weapon, truth, justice, making sure the galaxy knows what he really is. Through the bond, he felt Hui's fear transform into determination. Then we hunt the hunter, Hui said. Yeah, Daehyun agreed. We hunt the hunter. The next morning, another incident occurred. This time it was serious. A transport ship carrying refugee families tried to dock, but the docking clamp malfunctioned. The ship was damaged and 3 people were injured. When Daehyun and Hui inspected the clamp, they found another sabotage device. But this one was different. It had been installed recently, probably within the last day. Theron is escalating, Bowman said grimly. He knows we're onto him. He's trying to force the Council's hand before we can gather enough evidence. Then we need to move faster, Jiwoo said. She'd been pale and shaken since hearing about the injured refugees. One of them was a child. Mireille made a decision. I'm calling the Galactic Council directly. I'll request an immediate investigation into the Vex Collective's activities on this station. But when she tried to send the communication, the system failed. Someone had cut them off from long-range communications. They were trapped, isolated, and Theron was making his move. Through their bond, Daehyun and Hui shared the same thought. This was about to get much worse before it got better. The station felt different now. People moved through the corridors with worried expressions. Rumors spread quickly about the communication blackout and the recent accidents. Some blamed poor maintenance. Others whispered about sabotage. Theron used the chaos to his advantage. He called public meetings where he spoke smoothly about the need for professional corporate management. The current administration, while well-meaning, clearly cannot maintain critical systems, he said to crowds of concerned workers. The Vex Collective has the resources and expertise to make this station safe again. Some people believed him. They were scared and he offered them security. But others, especially the refugees who'd found sanctuary on Taesong 7, knew better. They'd seen what corporate control meant. Deportations, exploitation, families torn apart for profit margins. Daehyun and Hui spent most of their time trying to repair systems faster than they could be sabotaged. It was exhausting work. Every day brought new emergencies. A water recycler that stopped working, life support glitches in the lower decks, power fluctuations that threatened to shut down entire sections. Through it all, more people began approaching them. A Keltharian pilot named Hyon offered his ship for whatever they might need. A human doctor named Sumi started treating injured refugees in her clinic, refusing payment because we're all in this together. Workers from different species and backgrounds began coordinating, watching for sabotage, helping each other. You inspired this, Jiwoo told Daehyun one evening. You and Hui. People saw a human mechanic bond with a refugee dragon and thought maybe we can all look out for each other. Daehyun felt uncomfortable with the attention. We just did what was right. That's the point, Jiwoo said. Everyone thinks they're too small to make a difference. You proved that's not true. But inspiration wouldn't be enough if they couldn't expose Theron. They needed proof of his crimes, something undeniable that would force the Galactic Council to act. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. We had been spending time with other refugees on the station, listening to their stories. Most Yongari avoided him at first, still traumatized by their experiences. But gradually they began to trust him. He was one of them, someone who understood their pain. One night, a young Yongari named Nagyung came to their quarters. She was older than Hui, her scales marked with scars from battles she'd survived. She moved carefully as if afraid someone might be watching. I heard you were investigating the Vex Collective, Nagyung said quietly. I have information, but it is dangerous to speak of. Hui gestured for her to sit. You are safe here. Tell us. Nagyung's story was horrifying. She'd been captured by Vex forces 6 months ago, along with 30 other Yongari. They'd been taken to a facility where scientists harvested their scales and fire glands while they were still alive. The pain had been unimaginable. They said we were animals, Nagyung whispered. Said Yongari had no rights under galactic law because we had no permanent homeworld. They treated us as resources, not people. How did you escape? Daehyun asked gently. A guard took pity on me. He was young, new to the job. He saw the pain in my eyes and he let me go. Told me to run and never look back. Nagyung looked down at her claws. But I did look back. I memorized everything. The location of the facility, the names of the scientists, the corporate codes on all their equipment. All of it was Vex Collective. Will you testify to this? Bauman asked. He'd been quietly recording everything with Nagyung's permission. Yes, Nagyung said firmly, if it stops them from doing this to others, but she hesitated. Theron knows about me. He has been looking for me. That is why I hide, work under false name. If he finds me before we expose him, she didn't need to finish. They all understood the danger. We'll protect you, Daehyun promised. All of us. That night, they held a secret meeting in the warehouse that Daehyun and Hui called home. Present were Bowman, Jiwoo, Hyun, Sumi, Nagyung, and a dozen others who'd volunteered to help. Bowman laid out their situation. We have testimony from Nagyung. We have the sabotage devices as physical evidence. But without communication access, we can't report this to the Galactic Council. Theron has control of all long-range systems. What about the old communication array? Jiwoo asked. In the abandoned upper docks. It hasn't been used in years, but the equipment should still be there. It would take days to get it operational, Bowman said, and Theron would notice if we started working up there. Not if we're sneaky, Hyon offered. My ship has communication equipment. If we can get it to the upper docks without being detected, we could broadcast from there. Security monitors all ship movements, Bowman pointed out. Then we create a distraction, Sumi suggested. Something big enough to pull Theron's attention elsewhere while we move Hyun's ship. They began planning in earnest. It was risky, possibly suicidal, but they were out of options. If they didn't act soon, Theron would complete his takeover and none of them would be safe. Daehyun felt Hui's anxiety through the bond. The dragon hadn't spoken much during the meeting, but his fear was evident. Later, when everyone else had left, Daehyun asked, What's wrong? I am afraid I will fail you, Hui admitted. All these people, they look to us as leaders. But I am just young dragon who could not even feed himself. What if I make mistake? What if people get hurt because of me? Daehyun understood that fear. He felt it too, but he also remembered what Hui had taught him about the bond. We don't have to be perfect, Daehyun said. We just have to try. And we're not alone. Look at all the people willing to help. That pilot who let Nagyung escape, even though it could cost him everything. That guard made a choice to be kind when he could have looked away. Just like I made a choice to share my dinner with you. Small acts of kindness, Hui murmured. Yeah, but they add up. They inspire others. That's what humans do best, Hui. We see someone suffering and we help even when it's risky, even when it's hard. And apparently when we do that, sometimes we form bonds with dragons that give us power we never imagined. Hui's eyes glowed with warmth. You are wise for someone so young. I'm 32, Daehyun protested. Very young, Hui insisted, but there was humor in his tone now. The distraction they planned was simple but effective. Bauman would discover another sabotage device in the main power distribution center and respond with full security alert. While Theron's forces were focused on that, Hyun would move his ship to the upper docks through maintenance corridors designed for cargo transport. Daehyun and Hui would go with him, along with Jiwoo, who knew the old communication systems best. Their job was to get one message out to the Galactic Council with all their evidence before Theron realized what was happening. The night before the operation, Daehyun found himself unable to sleep again. He stood by the window of their quarters, looking out at the stars visible beyond the station's hall. Hui joined him, the dragon's head resting gently on Daehyun's shoulder. Are you afraid? Hui asked. Terrified, Daehyun admitted. You? Very much so. But also, Hui paused, also grateful. Before I met you, I thought I would die alone in that scrapyard. Now I have purpose, friends, family even. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm glad I asked for your leftovers that night. Daehyun reached up and touched Hui's scales. Best leftovers I ever shared. Through the bond, they shared strength and courage. Neither of them was brave alone, but together they felt like maybe they could do this impossible thing. The next morning, Director Mirai called Daehyun to her office. She looked tired, older than she had just weeks ago. I know you're planning something, she said bluntly. Bowman told me. Not the details, but enough. Daehyun tensed. Are you going to stop us? No. Mirai pulled out a data chip and handed it to him. I'm going to help. This contains my official logs documenting everything that's happened, including my suspicions about Theron. If you manage to contact the council, make sure they get this. Why are you helping us? Daehyun asked. You could lose everything. I already am losing everything, Mirai said sadly. This station was supposed to be a place of hope. A sanctuary. Theron is destroying that, and I don't have the power to stop him through official channels, so... She smiled slightly. So I'm trusting a mechanic and a dragon to save us all. Strange world we live in. As Daehyun left her office, data chip safely in his pocket, he thought about how much had changed. A month ago, he'd been a lonely mechanic who kept his head down and avoided people. Now he was about to risk his life for refugees he barely knew, working with friends he'd made along the way, bonded to a dragon he'd die for. Small acts of kindness building into something bigger. Tomorrow, they would either save the station or lose everything. But tonight, for the first time in 5 years, Daehyun felt truly alive. Bowman triggered the security alert as planned, reporting a major sabotage device in the power distribution center. Theron's mercenaries rushed to the location, and for the first few minutes, the distraction worked perfectly. Hyun piloted his ship through the maintenance corridors with Daehyun, Hui, and Jiwoo aboard. The old passages were tight and filled with debris, but Hyun was a skilled pilot. They made it halfway to the upper docks before alarms started blaring. They found us, Hyun said grimly, checking his instruments. Someone must have been monitoring the maintenance corridors. Through the ship's view screen, they could see security drones activating throughout the station. Theron's voice came through on all communication channels. This is Representative Theron. The station is under lockdown. All ships are grounded. Anyone resisting will be detained by force. This is for your own safety. He knew we were planning something, Jiwoo said. How? Does not matter now, Hui replied. We must reach the communication array. It is our only chance. The ship shuddered as a drone fired on them. Hyun cursed and took evasive action, but in the narrow corridor there was limited room to maneuver. Another hit struck their rear thruster, and warning lights flashed across the control panel. We're losing power, Hyun reported. I can't make it to the upper docks. We'll crash if I don't land now. Where's the nearest landing zone? Daehyun asked. Cargo Bay 7, about halfway to our destination, but it'll be crawling with Theron's forces. Land there anyway, Daehyun decided. We'll go on foot. The landing was rough. The ship's damaged thruster failed completely at the last moment, and they hit the cargo bay floor hard. Everyone was bruised but alive. They rushed out of the ship to find the cargo bay already surrounded by mercenaries. These weren't station security. They were Vex Collective soldiers, heavily armed and armored. "Surrender now," the lead mercenary ordered. "You're only making this harder on yourselves." Hui stepped in front of the others, wings spreading wide despite their healed but still weak condition. "We will not surrender. We go to upper docks. You cannot stop us." The mercenary laughed. "A crippled dragon and 3 civilians? I think we can manage," and that's when the lights went out. In the sudden darkness, Daehyun heard Bowman's voice through his comm. "Got you some help." "Move now." Emergency lighting kicked in, but it was dim. In the confusion, Sumi appeared from a side corridor, leading a group of refugees. They threw smoke grenades that filled the cargo bay with thick, choking clouds. "This way!" Sumi shouted. They ran, following her through passages that Daehyun had never known existed. The refugees clearly knew every hidden route in the station, all the forgotten spaces where people without legal status learned to hide. Behind them, they heard the mercenaries pursuing. Gunfire echoed through the corridors. Someone screamed. Daehyun hoped it wasn't anyone from their group. They emerged in an old maintenance shaft that led upward. It was designed for climbing, with handholds built into the walls. For humans, it would be challenging. For Hui, it was nearly impossible. "I cannot fit," Hui said, looking at the narrow shaft. "You must go without me." "No," Daehyun said firmly. "We're bonded. We do this together or not at all." "Then we are trapped," Hui replied, "because I physically cannot squeeze through that space." Through the bond, Daehyun felt the dragon's frustration and despair. But he also felt Hui's determination to not let them fail because of his limitations. Jiwoo was examining the shaft structure. "What if we take the exterior route?" she suggested. "Go outside the station hull. There are service corridors out there for external repairs." "Those aren't pressurized," Hyun pointed out. "We'd need suits." "I do not need suit," Hui said. "Dragons can survive in vacuum for short periods. Our scales protect us." "But we can't," Daehyun said. Then he paused, an idea forming. "Wait, what if you carried us? Flew along the outside of the station?" Everyone stared at him. "Your wings are healed enough, right?" Daehyun asked Hui through their bond. "Yes, but I have never flown with passengers, and in vacuum I cannot breathe fire to propel myself properly. I would be weak, slow." "Slow is better than caught," Hyun said, "and I can work without a suit for about 5 minutes if we move fast. Most pilots train for emergency decompression." "I can manage 5 minutes too," Jiwoo agreed. "Did you think I became an engineer without learning to survive vacuum?" Sumi looked uncertain but nodded. "I'll trust you." They found emergency suits in a nearby locker, the kind designed for quick evacuations. They weren't comfortable and wouldn't last long, but they might work for a short journey. The airlock leading to the station exterior was old and manual, which meant Theron couldn't lock them out remotely. They cycled through, and Daehyun felt the familiar sensation of artificial gravity giving way to the weightlessness of space. Outside, the stars were overwhelming. Daehyun had worked on stations most of his adult life, but had rarely gone into open space. The vastness of it made him feel tiny and insignificant. Hui spread his wings, and despite everything, the sight was magnificent. The dragon's scales caught the light from the nearby sun, creating rainbow patterns across his body. In this environment, Hui looked like he belonged among the stars. "Hold on to me," Hui instructed, very tightly. "If you let go, you will drift away and die." They gripped the dragon's body, finding handholds in the ridges of his scales. Daehyun positioned himself near Hui's neck with Jiwoo behind him, then Hyun, then Sumi. They formed a chain along the dragon's back. Hui began to fly. It was nothing like flying in atmosphere. There was no air resistance, no gravity to pull against. The dragon moved by, pushing off from the station's hull and using small bursts of fire to adjust direction. Progress was slow, just as Hui had predicted, but they were moving. Below them, they could see the station's lights. It looked peaceful from out here, beautiful even. Hard to believe a battle was taking place inside. Halfway to the upper docks, disaster struck. A patrol ship spotted them. It was small, designed for station security, but it had weapons. "They see us," Hyun shouted through the comm built into his emergency suit. The ship fired. Hui tried to dodge, but carrying 4 people made him slow. The blast struck his left wing, tearing a new hole in the membrane. Through the bond, Daehyun felt Hui's pain. It was agonizing, like his own arm being ripped. But the dragon didn't scream. He just kept flying. "Must reach array," Hui gasped. "Must complete mission." The patrol ship lined up for another shot. But before it could fire, something else appeared. Another ship, larger and faster. It positioned itself between the patrol ship and Hui, absorbing the blast meant for them. Through the comm, they heard a familiar voice. "This is Director Mirai. I'm ordering all Vex forces to stand down immediately." The patrol ship hesitated, clearly receiving conflicting orders. "I don't care what Theron told you," Mirai continued. "I am still the station director, and I am ordering you to withdraw. Unless you want to be charged with attempted murder of civilians?" The patrol ship backed off. Mirai's ship paced alongside them, providing cover as Hui continued his painful journey. They finally reached the upper dock's airlock. Getting inside was a relief. The moment the airlock repressurized, Hui collapsed. His injured wing bled and his breathing was labored. "I'm okay," the dragon insisted, though he clearly wasn't. "Array, must reach Array. Jiwoo, you go ahead," Daehyun ordered. "Get the communication system working." "Hyun, help her. Sumi, stay with me and Hui." Jiwoo and Hyun ran toward the old communication center. Sumi immediately began treating Hui's wing, her medical training taking over despite her own exhaustion. Daehyun held Hui's head in his lap, sharing strength through their bond. He pushed his own life force toward the dragon, trying to ease the pain. "You're not dying on me," Daehyun whispered. "We've come too far. Not planning to die," Hui wheezed. "Still want to taste human food you keep promising to cook for me?" Despite everything, Daehyun laughed. "It's terrible food. Station rations. Still want to try it? With you." Through the bond, their feelings intertwined. Fear and pain, yes, but also love. Real, deep love between two beings who'd found each other in the darkest of circumstances. Jiwoo's voice came through the comm. "We're in. The array is old but functional. Uploading all evidence now, sending to Galactic Council emergency channels." "How long until it's sent?" Daehyun asked. 2 minutes. But Theron's forces are breaking through the doors. "We might not have 2 minutes." "You have to hold them," Daehyun said. "Whatever it takes." He heard sounds of fighting through the comm. Hyun was apparently better with improvised weapons than anyone had expected. Jiwoo was shouting encouragement and simultaneously working the communication console.
60 seconds, Jiwoo reported.
Come on, I'm an explosion," someone screamed. Daehyun couldn't tell who. 30 seconds. Almost there. "They're through the door," Hyun yelled. Send. It's done. The council has everything." Relief flooded through Daehyun. Whatever happened now, the truth was out. Theron's crimes were exposed to the entire galaxy. But the victory felt hollow as he heard mercenaries overwhelming Jiwoo and Hyun's position. Through the corridors, he could hear booted feet running toward them. Hui struggled to stand. "We must fight." "You can barely move," Sumi protested. "Then I fight barely moving." The mercenaries burst into the chamber. There were at least 20 of them. The medical bay was chaos. Doctors and nurses rushed between beds where injured people from the battle were being treated. Jiwoo had a broken arm and several burns. Hyun had a concussion. Dozens of refugees who'd helped create distractions during the fight needed attention for various injuries. But the worst was Hui. The dragon lay on a specially reinforced medical platform, his breathing shallow and irregular. The blast to his wing had done more damage than they'd first realized. Internal injuries, the doctor said. Massive trauma to his energy centers. In humans, they would be organs. In Yongari, they were something more complex, tied to the dragon's ability to produce fire and fly. Daehyun sat beside Hui, holding the dragon's clawed hand. Through the bond, he could feel Hui's life force flickering like a candle in strong wind. "Stay with me," Daehyun whispered. "Please, don't leave." "Trying," Hui managed. His golden eyes were dim, lacking their usual light. "Trying very hard." The door opened and an elderly Yongari entered. She was magnificent, her scales a deep purple that seemed to contain entire galaxies. She moved with authority and grace, and every dragon in the room immediately showed respect. "I am Elder Nagyong," she said. Her voice was deep and resonant. "I lead this fleet. We received your broadcast, young ones. The entire Galactic Council heard your evidence. Theron and his conspirators are being arrested as we speak. Will Hui survive?" Daehyun asked desperately. Nagyong approached the medical platform and examined Hui carefully. Her expression grew sad. "The injuries are severe. Without intervention, he will die within hours." "Then intervene," Daehyun nearly shouted. "You have advanced medicine, right? You can save him. Our medicine cannot help with this type of injury, Nagyung said gently. It is damage to his core essence, not just his body. There is only one possible solution. She turned her ancient eyes to Daehyun. The Shimjong bond you share. It is deeper than I have seen in 1,000 years. If you are willing, you can share your life force with him. Sustain him while his body heals itself. Yes, Daehyun said immediately. Whatever it takes. You do not understand the cost, Nagyung warned. To share your life force means to shorten your own lifespan. Every year you give to Hui is a year you lose. He might live, but you might die young. Are you truly willing to make that sacrifice? Daehyun looked at Hui's face, at those golden eyes that had looked at him with desperate hunger in a scrapyard and asked politely for leftovers. At the being who'd taught him that caring about others wasn't weakness but strength. At his partner, his friend, his family. I've been dying for 5 years, Daehyun said quietly, since I lost my family. I was just breathing but not really living. Hui brought me back to life. If I can give him some of that life in return, that's not a sacrifice. That's a gift. Nagyung's eyes shimmered with approval. Then we will begin. But I must warn you, the process is painful. You will feel everything he feels as his body tries to heal. I'm ready. They prepared the ritual in a quiet room away from the chaos of the medical bay. Nagyung drew symbols on the floor that glowed with soft light. She positioned Daehyun and Hui so they faced each other, their foreheads touching. Open your bond completely, Nagyung instructed. Hold nothing back. Let your essences merge. Daehyun closed his eyes and reached through the bond. He found Hui's consciousness waiting for him, weak but still present. You should not do this, Hui's thought whispered in his mind. I am just one dragon. Not worth your life. You're worth everything, Daehyun replied. He began to push his life force through the bond. It felt like pouring water from one container to another. Except the water was made of memories and energy and the essence of who he was. The pain hit immediately. Daehyun felt Hui's injuries as if they were his own. His wings screamed with agony. His internal energy centers burned like they were being torn apart. He gasped and nearly broke the connection, but forced himself to continue. Through the pain, he poured himself into Hui. His strength. His will to live. His hope for the future. Everything he had, he gave freely. Minutes passed like hours. Daehyun felt his own body weakening as Hui's began to stabilize. It was working, but the cost was heavy. He could feel years of his life flowing away. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of the energy flowing only one direction, it began to circle. Hui's essence, strengthened by what Daehyun had given, started flowing back. Not taking from Daehyun, but adding to him. The bond became a loop, energy cycling between them, growing stronger with each pass. Nagyung gasped. This should not be possible. The bond it is completing itself. The pain transformed into something else. Power. Pure, incredible power that belonged to both of them equally. Daehyun felt his body healing from exhaustion and strain. Hui's injuries began closing at impossible speed. Light erupted from both of them, so bright that Nagyung had to shield her eyes. The symbols on the floor blazed with energy. The entire room shook. When the light finally faded, both Daehyun and Hui lay on the floor, breathing hard but alive. More than alive. They felt stronger than ever before. Nagyung stared at them in wonder. A perfect Shimjong bond. I thought they were only legends. The kind of bond where neither gives to the other but both become greater together. She touched her chest reverently. You have created something that has not existed for 1,000 years. Daehyun sat up slowly, then helped Hui rise. The dragon's wing was completely healed, no trace of the injury remaining. His scales gleamed with health and his golden eyes burned with inner fire. Through the bond they could feel each other perfectly now. Not two separate beings connected, but something new. Partners in the truest sense. Over the next few days, the station slowly returned to normal. Theron and his conspirators faced trial before the Galactic Council. The evidence Daehyun and his friends had gathered was undeniable. Theron was sentenced to life imprisonment, and the Vex Collective was forced to pay massive reparations to the Yongari people. Director Mirai kept her position and was praised by the Council for her courage in standing against corruption. She immediately began implementing new policies to protect refugees and ensure station safety. Bowman was promoted to Chief of Security. His first act was to hire more refugee workers, giving them legitimate jobs and legal status. Jiwoo became the station's lead engineer, with Daehyun as her deputy. Together, they transformed the repair docks into the most efficient operation in the sector. Hyun started a transport service specifically for refugees, offering free passage to anyone fleeing persecution. Sumi expanded her medical clinic with funding from the council, treating everyone regardless of their ability to pay. But the biggest change was in how people viewed the Yongari. News of Daehyun and Hui's bond spread across the galaxy. Other dragons began coming forward with their own stories of persecution. Humans and other species who'd shown them kindness shared their experiences. The Galactic Council passed new laws protecting displaced species and recognizing Yongari rights. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And slowly, carefully, other bonds began forming. A human scientist bonded with a Yongari scholar. A Keltharian pilot bonded with a young dragon. Each bond was different, unique to the individuals involved, but all shared the same foundation: compassion, trust, and mutual respect. 5 years after that night in the scrapyard, Taesong 7 had become known throughout the galaxy as the Station of Second Chances. Refugees from dozens of species found sanctuary there. The population had tripled, and the once struggling repair facility was now a thriving hub of trade and culture. Daehyun and Hui still lived in their warehouse quarters, though it was much nicer now. They decorated it together, mixing human and Yongari styles into something uniquely theirs. One evening, they sat together watching the sunset through the large window they'd installed. Well, it wasn't really a sunset since they were in space, but the station's orbit around the local sun created similar effects. "Do you ever regret it?" Daehyun asked. "That night when you asked me for leftovers?" Hui considered the question seriously. "No, that was the moment my life truly began. Before that, I was just surviving. After that, I started living." "Same for me," Daehyun admitted. "I thought I was alive, but I was really just going through the motions. You taught me what it means to actually care again. You taught me that kindness still exists in the galaxy," Hui replied. "That there are beings who will help even when they have nothing to gain. You restored my faith in others." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, sharing thoughts and feelings through the bond that had become as natural as breathing. A knock on the door interrupted them. It was a young human woman with a Yongari hatchling beside her. The dragon was small, barely larger than a dog, with bright green scales. "Sorry to bother you," the woman said nervously, "but we were told you could help us. This is Teo. He's an orphan. I found him hiding in the lower docks, starving and scared. I've been feeding him, and we think maybe we've started to bond. But we don't know what to do next." Daehyun and Hui exchanged glances, memories of their own beginning flowing between them. "Come in," Daehyun said warmly. "We'll help you. That's what we do here." As the woman and young dragon entered, Hui caught Daehyun's eye, and there was humor in the dragon's expression. "History repeats itself,"